Hi guys, on the hour I'm going to continue with making my Sasquatch here on Carly's Creative Clay. See you then. Hi guys, welcome to my live stream. I'm Carly from Carly's Creative Clay. I hope you've all had a really good week. My week has been good. Now, normally I don't do anything on the projects that we're doing on the stream outside of streaming, but I had a bit of a stir crazy week and wanted to explore what I was doing with my to make sure that I was going right with it. So first off, to show you, this is before we had the legs and torso done. If you want to see that, there's videos of it on my YouTube channel, so just click on the name on YouTube and you will get through to my channel with all the videos. So what I did was I've done the first arm so you can see an end product before we get started on the second arm. So let's hold it up more to the camera. You can see we've got a decently strong shoulder muscle going in there through to the scapula, and that's the main joining point to the rest of it. Now I've done some foraged food. What I did was I went on to Google imagery and looked up Pacific Northwest of America's forage food, and that's because there have been the most Sasquatch reports in Pacific Northwest of America, and they came up with some dandelions, these halfway between orange and half between true red. I mixed a bit up of that to make the berries. 2 types of mushrooms. There was the oyster mushrooms and these little dark ones with frills, and I have no idea what they are, but they're leaves that they look like the stem of a plant without no flowers, and they're curled into a spiral, but people were saying apparently they're really nice. And lastly, they had long green, they look like almost like very long spider plant leaves, but without all the different colours. It was a solid green, and they're found around river and pond edges, and I thought that would make a really good way of giving him something to hold it all in. So I'm going to start out. I'll show you very quickly how I made all this, because I've got some leftover clay from it all. Now I'm going to describe it rather than do it. For these leaves, I'm going to show you how to do one of them, and to get this bunched effect so you can put all your forageable items in, I laid out a load of them slightly overlapping so that they stuck together, and then once I've got it the width I wanted, I made 2 longer leaves and put a diagonal cross on the front. So it will be buried under all your foraged food, but it adds structural stability to the leaf bundle so that it don't just fall apart in the oven. That makes sense? And made piles of the different foods, stacked them all up on my desk, and then took pinches of them, put them into place. I put the leaves slightly folded up on the desk and put some of the pinches in, then put it in place, pushed it so that it was stuck to the rest of the Sasquatch and to his hand, then continued to fill it up. Yeah? So let's show you quickly how to make each of these things, and I'll start with the lightest colour first. This is ochre and white for the oyster mushrooms, and what you're doing is you're going to take off a few pinches that are varying sizes, some slightly big, some slightly small. You don't really even need to roll them into a ball, just as little pinches like that. You're going to curve over in the centre and bring into a point like so. So let's do it again, like this. Use your thumb, curve it over, and pinch at the bottom. So you've got that little teardrop that pinches to the front, and you don't want them to all be uniform. You want some of them to be wider than others, because if you look at oyster mushrooms, they're not at all uniform. Yeah? So, curving them over and pinching, like I did on all the others, like that. Then we're literally going to just stick them together in a random jumble that looks kind of nice. So let's put this one out to one side like that. It probably needs a tiny one there, so I'm going to do a very, very, very small one. They're very easy to do. So, like so. Do a couple of those in different shapes, and as you see on my pile, there's a few different types just all smudged together, and that's how you're making your oyster mushrooms. So let's put that to one side. Now the next lightest colour are those dandelions. So you're getting the true yellow. Take a little pinch, form a ball. Put that to one side. Then you're getting your dark green, and not that one, that one. That is the leaf green and a little bit of brown in it. And you're gonna, first off, let's flatten that down a little bit more. We're gonna make the little cross of leaves that sit on the base of the flower. So you're going to roll out a little dot. Let's bring it up, and we're going to pinch that into a square and flat it down, pinch it into a square like so. Then you need your needle tool or something with a small flat point. Where did this one? On the flat side of the square, you're going to push a dent into the middle, and do that on all four sides like so. Oop. And then can you see you end up with, it looks like a 4-leaf clover. Voice going croaky again. Going to put that yellow dot directly on top like that. See? Then I'm going to use my pin tool to make it look more like a dandelion by putting some dots and swirls and scruffing it up a bit. Don't forget to go around the sides so that it looks right, because I have done it before. I did the top, didn't do the sides, and it looks odd. So scruffed up on its base leaves. Then what you're going to do is roll a little stalk like so, pinch clay, just roll it out into a thin stick. You don't want to go too thin because it's hard to push it on. You're going to use the flat of one end and push that into the middle of those 4 leaves like so. That's your dandelion. Now the leaves for the dandelion, I actually find that really fun. You're gonna get the same colour green as you use for the stalk and make a basic leaf shape like so. Then I push mine down onto a glass board using my pin tool. I hold it so that I can push evenly and do lines. I find if you hold it like that, it's too upright and you start to actually get scrape marks, so you want to get it much more flat. And you're gonna push out some lines on the leaf. Turn it round. Now make sure they don't touch or the leaf will fall apart. Does that make sense? You need that line through the middle that will join it all. So like that. Get my tissue blade and I'll hold it up and show you what I've done. Oops, center, sorry, there we go. See? So you need that middle line. You can make them longer and thinner if you want them to look like a more mature dandelion. Can you see I just stretched it out a little? And there you have it, that's your dandelion leaves. So we've now got one mushroom and the dandelions done. So one mushroom with the point. So let's get the dark brown. Enough for a head of a mushroom. We're going to roll that into a ball. Then you can either do this on the tip of your thumb or on a glass counter, but I'm going to do it on my thumb so you can see. You're going to push it down on one side to make that flat, and whilst you're doing that you're going to spin it round so that you're making that long point shape for the top of the mushroom. See? And that sits fine. So then you come along with your needle tool and you do some little zigzaggy frilly marks, spin it round and make sure you're not pushing too hard on the back, because you're going to find that you start to smudge out the texture you just put in. So like this. There we go, we've now got the marks to make it look all frilly. So then we are literally just putting a stalk on. That brown was the standard chocolate with some black mixed in. This is a whole heap of white and a tiny bit of the brown. And we're just going to do a mushroom stalk. So flatten one end. Helps if... There we go. And roll it into a bit of a stick. And then you're just going to push that onto the bottom. Make sure it's secured. And you've got your mushroom. Right. So we now have the green spirals, which really simple. You're going to roll your clay into a long thin sausage like that. Taper one end so it's into a point. Then you start to roll it up, making sure that the point is slightly sticking up over the top like that. And then spiral it up a bit and leave a bit of a stick down. And I swear to you, you will see that if you Google Pacific Northwest forageable foods. And on it, I then make sure your needle tool's clean. Put a few little zigzag lines through it, because if you see, it's not a completely smooth leaf. It has these sort of crinkles in it, like that. See? And that is that done. So lastly, some red berries, and if you can see, this is a orange and red mix. So by not mixing it in totally and leaving it with lines like that, you'll find your berry looks far more realistic, because it's a mixture of colours rather than one solid colour. So you're going to roll that into a very rough ball. It doesn't matter if you've got all the joining lines, because you're going to come along and mark out so that it looks more like the rough surface of a berry. And I find either put it all in place and then draw on this detail, or you're going to have to go deeper, because the very act of turning it and holding it will smudge some away. See? But you get there pretty quick. So that's all those forage bits. So the last thing to show you are those long leaves, and that is the true green. Take a fairly reasonable lump of that, smooth out the top edge. Let's move that blade right out the way of my arm, and you're going to roll that into a long stick, tapering at one end like that. Then I push it down flat. You don't want it too thin, it will make it harder to put it in place without it breaking or sticking where you don't want it. If you try and remove it by peeling it up, you've got a high likelihood that it'll work, but you will also find that it can snap like that. Now say this broke, you can either roll it out, or you can put it back down on your glass counter, put the join line slightly overlapping like that, and push it back down. You can see it vanishes. But if you want to avoid that happening, use your blade, your tissue blade, and you're going to put it against your counter and pull it towards you, and that will free it up without any breakage. So we're just going to do the divide line on that leaf like that, and one on the other side. So then we know whichever side we use, it will look right. And you're literally just going to lay it down, do lines of those leaves, and then put a cross like that of leaves, and then start to bring it up around itself. And then you've got the forage basket. Real fast walk through there. So, you know how I said I made I did some work on this off the stream? Well, it weren't just him. I had a thought. I wanted to make a Sasquatch family, and so I'm going to show you. I have made his partner and child already, so you can get a look at what the end product of the face and head and it all together is going to look like. So I want to show this off. Not been anywhere online with it yet. So that's the female and the young, and she is sitting on a rock. But if you see, they have the conical head, quite a large nose, and quite a pronounced brow ridge. These are all things that have been reported. So what I thought is, if she sits there like that, he can have his hand on hers, giving her something from there. So one of the bits that I've made, so they stand together like that. Now I've used glass eyes with her, and I'll show you how I put them in and how I get them so they look quite light when I do his head on the next week. But if you're wondering beforehand, I didn't want to spring it on you. If you look for little packs of doll's eyes, they gotta be glass.
Oh, yeah, I just realised the time.
Hi, how are you? It's nice to see you. So yeah, these ones I got ages ago, and it hasn't got a size written on it, which is really useful of me. It took me until my second year of buying stuff to realise I need to write the size of everything down, because my mind will not hold it. And I got them before that, so I'm really sorry I can't give you the size. I can probably over this week get a tape measure on it and give you the diameter. Yeah? So we're going to start on this Sasquatch's arm, and I'll keep her in view so that I can measure that he can stand and his hand will rest in the right place. Okay, so on previous videos I showed you mixing up of this brown swirly clay. If you go back and look on the Sasquatch ones, you'll see it. But basically it's getting strands of different colours, twisting them together, folding them in half, doing a whole heap of twisting like that, and then cutting the outside of the pattern block and turning it round so that you have all of the same pattern. That would be this on the inside. Okay, that's the very, very, very brief version of it. Now, when I do dragon's wings on wires, I just push the clay on and then start to pull it into shape from the middle. I'm going to show you a different way with this arm. Let's move her out the way slightly. I'm going to start to shape it into a rough arm shape. Now, when I did this arm, I weighed the clay beforehand, so I'm making sure I'm using the same weight of clay on both sides, so that will make sure that I'm using, they'll end up looking the same basically. So I want that nice arch shape and then down into a kind of roughly long sausage like that, and we don't want it the full length of the arm. What we're going to do, you can use either your craft knife or your tissue blade. Sorry, we are going to cut down. We are leaving about 1/2 centimetre from the top. We're going halfway into this stick and it's going all the way down to the bottom. So let's put the blade well out of the way. Can you see? Halfway in, 1/2 centimetre from the top. We're just going to pull that a little bit open like that. Now this bit, we're just going to start to flatten out a bit, just a little, because what we're going to do now is we're going to push that wire into that groove that we just made. So again, this is why I recommend you bake all the textured work you've done on other bits of the body, because if we hadn't, holding this and putting this amount of pressure on, I'd have smudged all this out and all that work would have been for nothing. Do take your time with it and make sure that you're not snapping anything. If I put a lot of pressure on these plants and these sticky uppy bits, I'd snap it off. So I'm holding very much the chest, and if you see, there is no pressure going on that part of my hand. It's fingers that I'm using. You can also put the feet down and help have your counter help give resistance, but again, make sure that you're paying attention that you're not going to snap off toes. So I'm just bringing it round, and I want to have some clay for that scapula, so I'm pushing down and into place there like that. You don't want to go too far over your spine. Bit like that. That looks good to me. Now we've got to work on this front then, because can you see that looks atrocious? That's fine, it's meant to. I'm bringing it round. I'm going to again work out the best way to hold it so I'm not snapping anything. And you're trying to make sure you haven't trapped any air. If you can feel any air bubbles, either stab them or try and push them out that front bit. And I'm going to smooth that shoulder into the rest of this clay. Like that. Now, what I like to do is use some of my ball tools, and you can use just the end, but what I also like them for, especially these metal ones with the longer bit, is you can roll the clay onto your baked work and help start to bring that seam in so that it's not so visible. See? Now, the alternative that you can do is, let's get some more of my pattern clay. You can get a little little bit of your pattern clay, roll it into a very small thin stick like that, tap it flat, and just put that along the join line. So you can add to this if you need more clay, and you'll find that allocating it from another area would get in your way. Just add a bit more on and roll it in. So that's what I love the sides of these for. I know you can use knitting needles, which is what I used to use, but I found it was a bit long. But most people have got something metal that's long and thin. So a metal coat hanger, just chop about 30 centimeters out of the middle of one of them, and that would do fine. Just make sure you don't stab yourselves on the end. So I've had some wicked hand wounds from the pointy end of chopped up metal coat hangers. So that's my warning. You want to really get these join lines pushed in so that you've got a nice strong join between the clay that's baked and the clay that's not baked. We can get into shaping it afterwards, but if you try and shape and it's not joint on properly, you're more likely just to pull that bit of raw clay straight off. So the first thing you need to do when you're adding raw clay to baked clay is really address that it's all stuck on very, very firmly. And then you can get into adding more clay and getting the shapes that you want. So can you see? Look how well pushed in that all is. All the way around. Yeah? Now we can go on to trying to replicate what we got on that side. Whenever you sculpt, and this is the case for the most advanced sculptors down to the newest sculptors, it's far easier to do the first side of a limb than it is to do the second side. And that's the case on anything that you've got to copy to get the symmetry right. So what I'm doing first off is I'm defining that scapula in there. Now that scapula, if you don't know, that's the big semicircle bone on your back that all the tendons for your arm run underneath. As a little background information, when I was 16, I trained as one of the youngest qualified masseuses in London at the time. I'd been bothering them. No, it wasn't when I was 16, it was when I was 18. I started bothering them when I was 16, and the place that I went for training said they absolutely couldn't have someone that young on the course because you're practicing on each other, and not a lot of adults would want to start massaging a 16-year-old before they're qualified and know exactly what they're doing. It's just another area of pressure that they didn't want. But yeah, where I'm getting at all this, scapulas are the worst for getting knots and tension, because if you look at it, the muscles, the tendons, they go in a splay across like that, they come under that bone, they do a 180-degree twist and then go for a hole in the bone there and then down your arm. Terrible design. Of course it's going to get tangled and knotted up at times. So yeah, there are a few things in this world where you can basically say it's not at its best design wise. So I'm making sure I leave enough clay to do that nice big muscle across the top of the arm, going like that. Yeah? Now don't forget, depending on what the position of the arm is, some of these bumps will be different shapes. So I advise the best thing you can do is go onto Google imagery and find someone who has the same sort of muscle tone you're going for and is standing in a pose that you don't mind doing. It's far easier to copy it than it is to try and work it out. Having said that, here I am trying to work it out. So it goes diagonal in from the scapula across the back of the shoulder, like that. And you want quite a dip down, because once we start putting the fur in, if it's a very shallow jump, the fur scratches will just make it vanish. And it goes into under the armpit. But because we've got the arm raised on this side, it's going to go further under like that. There we go. So we now got to bring clay around that bend to go up the arm. So I'm getting the arm thickness at the top that I want, and I'm pushing on the outside edge and just starting to bring that up like this. Can you see we're starting to get a bend in there now? Like so. Once I've got it up to the length I want, and try and make sure that the wire stays in the centre of that clay and that you're not trapping a lot of air in it. So I want it up a little bit further, pushing all the way around, make sure it's formed properly onto that wire and it's not baggy. Then we can start working on that elbow, because that does not look right. What we're going to do is we're going to first start at the back and do the elbow bump. We're just pinching that in like so. So you've got the bump in there now, see? But that inside, it's got too big a curve. You need more of a fold there. So again, I'm going to come in with a ball tool, just start to put in that crease along the start of the elbow. And it goes quite a way under, and you can even come in with your needle tool and do a few little crease lines like that. Couple on that side, because if you see, when I bend my elbow like that, you can get crease lines there and there. That's what we're just scratching in, some of those on the underside as well. And remember, go a bit deep because you're going to be marking fur out. So that's it roughly. Now I want to make sure that it's at the right height for me. Lost a mushroom stalk. I'm going to have to see what I mean about being careful.
Hearty Life said, won't they be hidden by the fur?
Yes and no. Can you see on her? They do appear, those crease lines, only very subtly. But it's always good to get in the habit, even if it doesn't show up massively. Right, let's check his arms in the right height for her hand. Yes. Now don't forget, he's going to sink down a little bit because we've got pegs there to help it bond with the base. So about there. Yeah? I might lift his arm up just slightly, and you've got to be very careful that you're not pushing that wire through the clay, because the wire has more resistance to movement than the clay does. So you do very, very carefully. That looks about right to me. Right. So from there, we're going to come along and we're going to scratch in all that hair. Now, hair runs top to bottom along the arm. So you're going to need to get a bit of a curve from the chest like that. And I advise you're careful across those join lines from raw clay to baked clay, because you can lift it up, especially if you're going in that direction. I find it's better to go from the raw clay side over to the baked clay side. See, scratching, scratching, scratching like that. Now do a quick version of it. I might come in a bit later on and put more scratches in. I find instead of doing single long lines, which looks odd, doing lots of little short ticks is far more realistic than anything else. So we're going to go along doing this. I used to find scratching in fur really boring, but I find, especially if I find a day where I'm actually not feeling that great, it's really good mindless stuff, and you can just put an audio book on or listen to a lecture on YouTube, which is something I do a lot. And sorry, how about that? And it's very cathartic to see it all just come together like this. Now, if you would find doing this with a single tool really mind-blowingly boring, what you can make yourself, especially if you do a lot of fur, where is it? Ha, found it. You can make yourself one of these. Let's get the bit of cat fur off it. Right, what I've done is strung a load of needles together, then knotted the string, wound the string up so that it made a bundle like this, and then pushed clay round so that you've now got many needle tools. It's a bit of an annoyance to clean in between the needles, so you might not want to do as many as that, but again, that will come in and scratch in fur, especially on large areas, a lot quicker. See? I still find that it doesn't do as good a job as just sitting there with a single like this and scratching in. But once you've done all that, let's get on to the wrist and the hands, because that's more interesting than watching me scratching fur that I can do later.
Hearty Life says, ingenious.
Thank you. Also, I know needle felting has a several needle thing going on there. Sorry, dry mouth. On their craft, they can do a several needle felting tool that can be used for this, but it is liable to break because felting needles are a lot thinner than sewing needles. Right, let's do the hand. Little ball of clay. I'm gonna make sure I conditioned it, so just kneading it in. Why is there so much cat hair in this room? We should have got a Rex, Jamie. We should have got a Rex.
Never.
Right, now my clay's decently soft. We're going to roll it into a ball. That's smooth. And we're going to first off give ourselves a little wrist just by twisting a little end out like that. Now, on one side, you're going to pinch and bring out a thumb. And you want to go long and thin like that. Yeah? Then we can get the rest of the clay and bring it up to a finger shape. So you're looking for a mitten like that. We're going to squidge those fingers so that they're much thinner than the rest of the hand. Okay? Like so. So let me spin that around so you get a decent look at what I'm talking about. Yeah? That's your start of your hand. Now, the most important bit that I often get wrong is, remember, your thumbs are closest to your body, like this. So, if I put that on that hand like that, that would be wrong. Yeah? That way around. So make sure that you remember which side is the front and which side is the back. And how I do that is I start to bring that thumb into shape by just slightly tapping and bringing it forward. Now, it depends on what you want to do with your fingers. You can cut them through with your craft knife if you want splayed fingers. I'm going to actually use my needle tool because I want the fingers to be together. So we're going to divide, making sure that you don't mess up that thumb. Rest it on your fingertip and we're going to divide that into 4. So 1, 2, 3. Let's bring that last finger a little thinner, like that. There we go. Now, I'm going to need to make sure that I bring that line all the way over the tip. If you don't, it looks really odd that the fingers just suddenly stop and all the tips join up. See, like that? And if they look a bit square on the tips, just slightly tap on that top line in little triangles, and can you see you end up with nice square fingertips. Now, from there we can bring them down to the length that we want and make sure that the 2 end lines are slightly longer than the middle one, because if you notice there is a curve, it's not straight. Yeah? So I'm going to bring these up. Now, you can form little knuckles, especially with a ball tool. Let's get a very small tipped one by just encouraging the clay into little bumps, like so. You don't want big ones, they'll look really odd. Just little, like so. Whoop. You can spend ages and smooth those dots out, but I find, especially if I want to go for a more rugged looking hand, just doing slight little taps like that makes it look a little bit more rugged. Right, let's bring it down. Can you see?
Oh my goodness, that little hand is so cute.
Then, can you see there are, thank you very much, you've got bones running from the knuckles down the hand. So just very, very gently drawing those little dip lines. And then around the thumb, that little V shape that you get there. And there we have it. That's the back of the hand. Now for the inside, can you see you've got what your thumb makes a chicken drumstick? Then you've got
just so
sorry,
you can see.
let's go down a bit. Your thumb makes like a chicken, looks more like a chicken wing. Yeah. Then you've got that little round semicircle sausage, slightly curved into a semicircle sausage, and then your fingers. And here you've got a bit of a bump. So what I tend to do is this. From that inside line, I bring out that drumstick, like so. Then we're gonna bring a line up like that, and then start to curve that down and divide it up into those 4 finger bumps, like that. I'm going to smooth that down a little because they're a bit pronounced there, but I'm not doing the best job because it's all going to be hidden under holding the hand over there. But I'll show you on her hand that I spent ages working on it. And you just slightly, I use a bigger tool there, just bring that clay out from around there, just so you've got a bit more of a bump on that. Oops, sorry. There we go. A bit more of a bump there, like that. And you can then bring those finger lines back in and make sure they match up with the tips that you did, like that. So that's the rough hand, yeah. And look how much time I spent on that. Oops.
You've not got any light on it.
Have I not got any light on it? How's that?
That's the trick.
Took me quite a while to do all that. Oh, lastly, fingernails. Hold it very, very carefully on the tip of your finger. Get your smallest ball tool, or a cocktail stick tip will do that, and you're just going to start where the fingernails are and just drag it down like that,
to suggest the fingernails.
just to suggest it. So we're going to get that hand, making sure we put it on facing the right way up. And we're going to, I know I'm completely off screen, I'm just lining it up. Right, we're going to push that wrist onto that wire and make sure it's firmly secured to that bit of patterned clay, like that. So now, yep, let's do this. I'm going to turn the wrist. If you do, what I was going to say, if you do put it the wrong way up like that, you can move the clay around. Let's do that with it, and then you can match it up. They can hold hands like that, but it'll be easier to match it all up once it's on its base, which is possibly, no, I won't do that next week. I'll do that the head next week and then put it on its base, and then it'll all get baked together, and at that point I'll make sure that that hand matches up and holds on to hers. But you can see it's lining up fine. Right, so once you've scratched in all your detail, the only other bit that we need to do to it is do that frill around the wrist, because at the moment it will look a bit odd. I'll show you. If we scratch in that wrist, there still seems to be quite a gap between hand and wrist. Yeah? So what I've been doing is I've been taking a little bit of the patterned clay. Don't need a lot, tiny little bit. I think that's even too long. Rolling it into a small stick. like so. That will fit all the way around the wrist, no problem. Then I'm going to push that flat like so. Then come along and scratch in hair mark along the whole thing. Make sure you don't go all the way through, because you will just end up ripping the clay and it won't stay together as a single frill. Like that.
You're very close.
I know I'm very close to the bottom, but
Focus the camera.
I will be taking it up in a second and holding it up to the camera. Right. Now, blade, whoop, blade side down, like that. That's how you free it up. If you try and pull that up, it will just fall apart. Can you see? It's a single strip. On the back, I haven't gone through enough to make any scratches. On the front, it looks like frilled fur. Yeah? That then, I put that round the wrist, making sure the join line is at the most accessible point. So like that, like that. Bit tight round there, that's what you want. And I'm going to snap it off. So, we've now got that, but it does look obviously joint there. So, I come in, I give it a bit of a pinch along that join line to make it the same height as the rest of the arm. And then we come in scratching that fur in, and it turns into one solid piece. So let me show you, do a bit of it like so. Can you see how it vanishes as a separate piece? Yeah? And that's how I did that arm. I will come in and scratch in some fur off of the camera, but I think it's going to bore the hell out of you watching me do that. So, Sasquatch arms, that's how we do them. Next week, I will get on and make the head. Week after that, we're going to do the base that this all sits on. Okay? I hope you all have a really, really good week and that you're all staying safe. And I look forward to seeing you all next Wednesday. Okay, bye.